There's a tree called the eucalyptus that thrives on destruction. Its leaves contain flammable oils that ignite in wildfires, destroying the tree, only for it to regrow stronger than before. I think this symbolizes my time in Japan. When I first arrived, I wasn't confident in myself. I didn't stand up for myself. Maybe I was naive, having worked in Canada, where employee rights, at least in my previous job, were paramount. But working in Japan felt like a strange mix of high school drama meets religious cult, which I will save the religious cult part for a separate video. Now, previously, we left off with Company B breaking labor laws during their camp events. We worked 3 grueling 24-hour shifts watching kids as they partook in camp activities in the countryside. Yet we were only paid for 8 hours plus a measly $30 equivalent camp premium. Turns out this pay scheme, as you may have guessed, was highly illegal. Enter Saint Pepsi, an American colleague who was vocal about our rights. As things worsened, he clashed more with management. It turns out he had been in contact with Osaka's labor authorities. And, of course, not long after, a vague company-wide email went out about an accounting error regarding the camps. Soon, many of us were called in for private meetings with the regional manager. In these meetings, she showed us these spreadsheets and explained, using the most corporate-sounding bullshit, that the company owed us back pay for the school camps. She then presented a number and asked us to sign if we accepted. Some, of course, feeling pressured, signed immediately. But it later came out that the company had underpaid many teachers, offering half of what they were actually owed. Only those who questioned it before they signed got their full payouts. At this point, I fucking had it. This company had no problem yelling at me for minor infractions or making up nonsense rules, yet they themselves had broken the rules of the Japanese government. At that point, I lost any remaining respect I had for management and focused on what truly mattered, my students. That was the one part of the job I loved. My younger students would sometimes wander over during office duties and ask random questions to me in Japanese or get me to play with them. My older students saw class as a break from their stressful, cram school-filled lives. Sometimes lessons turned into hangout sessions where I'd share advice or stories from abroad and encourage them to take risks with their learning and be ambitious. Management wanted us to focus on tacky recruitment numbers, but for me it was about showing these kids that learning a new language could be actually fun, and there's a whole other world outside of Japan. Despite my shift in attitude, management's harassment continued until it didn't. One faithful evening, a junior Japanese manager, known for her temper, picked me as her target. But this time was different. This time I yelled back. I raised my voice and called her out on every ridiculous thing she said, and then I stormed out. That night, as I was clocking out, she and the senior manager stopped me, and to my surprise, she actually apologized. But after all the unrelenting abuse, I wasn't buying it. I told her your apology is insincere. It would be best if you corrected your behavior going forward. Now, excuse me, I have a train to catch. Then I walked off from that place. From then on, things changed. Management barely spoke to me. If they did, they were oddly polite. The harassment finally stopped, but at a cost. Remember the unpaid overtime scandal? Well, St. Pepsi was the one who got us our wages, and management hated him for it. They launched a smear campaign calling him mentally ill and blaming him for ruining the company. Some co-workers deep in Stockholm Syndrome even said things were fine before he started causing trouble and asking questions. But what really set them off was that he wasn't just fighting for foreign teachers, he also spoke up about unfair treatment towards the Japanese staff. Things like denied breaks and being forced to work through lunch, for example. He even reached out to labor unions. Not long after, we got a company-wide email stating that staff, specifically Japanese staff, must take their breaks in full and were not required to work during them. It was a small win, but the final straw for the management. St. Pepsi was, not long after, fired just before our contract renewals, which was a really strange move on the management's part. They gave nonsense reasons which he later shot down in a glorious legal battle that he won, walking away, in turn, with a hefty payout. Today, he's doing great in Japan, living comfortably with his partner. I once wanted to stay in Japan forever, but after witnessing both St. Pepsi's persecution and the bullying of a Japanese co-worker, let's call him Mr. S, I started feeling sick. Mr. S had joined the company, eager to improve his English, but management immediately disliked him for some reason. They humiliated him, often rolling their eyes and correcting his English harshly in front of others. Seeing this happen to someone else was oddly worse than experiencing it myself, or at least it really bothered me. Interestingly, for my last year at the company, I was never yelled at once. Not a single time. But the damage was done. I felt anxiety just commuting to work, expecting scoldings that never came. I realized I couldn't do this anymore. I still wanted to work in Japan, but finding a job outside of English teaching was tough. Moving to another school would just be a sideways step into the same problems. So I made the most difficult decision in my life. I decided to pull the plug on my dream. After St. Pepsi's firing, something unexpected happened. The foreign teachers rebelled. People started talking back to managers when they were being unreasonable. Even the Japanese staff became more vocal. The result? An exodus of teachers all leaving around the same time, including Mr. S. We had bonded over beers after work, and I encouraged him to find something better. And, of course, he did. Remember how management mocked his English? Well, shortly after quitting, he took a high-level English exam and scored nearly perfect, thus confidently passing. To note, the exam he took would be enough to become a certified translator. Meanwhile, the manager who treated him like shit had the exam level equivalent of high school English. Mr. S was finally free from this hell, and we still keep in touch to this day. As for me, I used up my vacation days and enjoyed a nice paid vacation for my final weeks at the company. When I resigned, they were sad to see me go, even pleading with me to stay and giving me the spiel you've probably all heard. Hell, you can't go. What about your students? But since I was leaving the country, they treated me better than those who just simply left for other companies. Before I left, I did one final act for St. Pepsi. I used the connections I had built over 7 years to help him land an amazing job. I could have taken the offer myself, but I knew I needed a clean break from this industry. I had no more stomach for teaching. I am often asked by friends if I ever want to go back to Japan for work, and the answer is absolutely, but only under different circumstances. Japan is still my favorite place in the world, and Osaka will always have a piece of my heart. These experiences transformed me. I arrived as a quiet, unsure guy and left as a confident adult who can handle whatever life throws my way. Canada seriously feels like living on easy mode compared to Japan, and for that, I owe Japan everything. Thank you for watching.